Hey everyone, welcome back to Engelbard. Yes, today I have another edition of utterly pointless comparisons for you. As you've no doubt already seen from the thumbnail and video title, I'll be covering the arcade and PC Engine versions of Gradius. Or is that Gradius? Or is it Gradius? Whatever you want to call it is fine by me. I'm not going to wade into the whole proper way to pronounce it, except to say this. Gradius originated in Japan, and if you look at the Japanese syllables used to spell out the name of the game, it's Gu-Ra-Di-U-Su. And with Japanese pronunciation, often you leave the vowel sound kind of off at the end or skip over it, so you would get Gradius. So that's probably the proper way to say it. But I think Gradius sounds better in English. So trigger warning, I'm going to pronounce it as Gradius for the rest of this video. Here's a spec comparison of the arcade and PC Engine hardware while I tell you just a little bit about the game. Gradius was released by Konami into the arcades in 1985. It followed a few other more primitive side-scrolling shooters they had released, things like Scramble, for example. Now, Gradius is one of the first, if not the very first, modern horizontal shooters. And when I say modern, I mean because it had set levels, it had power-ups, and it had bosses and a definite ending. Gradius was ported to a buttload, that's a technical term, of systems back in the day, probably most famously to the NES/Famicom. Now, as newer hardware became available, Gradius was ported to more systems. So we saw releases on things like the ultra-expensive Sharp X68000 and the considerably less expensive NEC PC Engine. And you'll notice I didn't say PC Engine/Turbografx 16 because Konami never released Gradius in America, not during the lifetime of the original Turbografx 16 hardware. So at a glance, how does the PC Engine version differ from the arcade version of the game? Well, there are different color choices made. Some parts of it are more vibrant, some parts of it are duller. There are sometimes fewer enemies on screen. There's sometimes less enemy fire and it's slower. And speaking of slowdown, if you like slowdown, oh boy are you gonna love PC Engine Gradius, because it's got a ton of it. And it also has some occasional flicker here and there, but that's not too bad, except for mainly one level that it's a problem on. When it comes to sound, it's quite different between the two versions of the game. The PC Engine's kind of funky PSG isn't my favorite sound chip in the world, but a lot of the songs do sound better on the PC Engine than they do in the arcade original. At least, in my opinion, they do. Your opinion may vary. Aside from that, there's an extra level in the PC Engine version that's not present in the arcade game, and it also has a whole bunch of hidden bonus levels you can access by bumping into certain spots in the levels. As far as my recording methodology for this video goes, I did use save states in both versions of the game to ensure that I could get the video synced up as closely as possible between the two versions. Enough talk, have at you! And we're off. Looking pretty good so far, PC Engine. Unsurprisingly, the backgrounds are higher contrast on the PC Engine. The starfield is a little more colorful on that version as well. Strangely, the enemies appear much less colorful and more washed out on the PC Engine version when compared to the arcade original, which is the opposite of many Konami games. Because it uses a window at the bottom of the screen for both the score and power-up meter instead of overlays, the game scrolls slightly vertically as you move up and down in stages where it shouldn't, similar to the PC Engine version of R-Type. Personally, I find this kind of annoying, but what can you do? you'll see the PC Engine version falls behind the arcade version several times, so I had to pause the arcade version a bunch of times to let the PCE catch up. Also, some enemies are smaller in the home version. For this part with the volcanoes, it's not just slowdown that makes it longer on PCE. The volcanoes actually erupt more times. Only an idiot would count how many times, though. On that note, it's about 14 times in the arcade version and about 17 or 18 on PCE, depending on what you count as a full eruption. Also, the mountains have slightly more detail in the PCE version. Here's the boss ship. It's a smidge smaller on the PC Engine. Stage 2. Things are not too different in this stage. The background is once again a little bit brighter on PCE. So here in the pre-boss assault for level 2, you'll see that there are way fewer enemies that teleport in at one time on the PC Engine version versus the arcade version. And it's the Moai Head stage! Yes, this was the very first one. There's a lot less enemy fire on PCE. Other than that, not too much to say here. How about this? Gradius was one of the earliest games to feature an adaptive difficulty that changes things like the amount of enemy bullets and their speed based on how many power-ups you currently have. The star field looks a little weird in this level on the PC Engine version. The first layer of the stars it scrolls at the same speed as the main foreground, which looks kind of strange. The music sounds significantly different between the two games in this stage. I'm actually not sure which one I like better, so I'll just leave it at I like them both. The pre-boss assault here is quite different between the two versions. The firing patterns are also not the same. As we head into Stage 4, visually the biggest difference is in the color choices once again. And if you look at the upside-down volcano in both versions, you can tell that it's significantly more detailed in the PC Engine version. Okay, this is probably the biggest difference between the games right here. The pre-boss assault in level 4 is pretty sparse in the PC Engine edition of Gradius. As you can see, in the arcade version you have about 8 enemies on screen at once, while in the PC Engine version, if you let them congregate, you get up to about 3 or 4 on screen. Here we are in the PC Engine's Extra level. Looking at this level, I can't help but wonder what they were thinking on so many levels. It's not terrible or anything, but it's got some of the worst slowdown in the game, and that's saying something. Hey, look, there are skulls that spit sperm at you! Awesome! Skeet, skeet, skeet! Alright, Stage 5. We'll have some things to talk about here, my retro gaming friends. Here we can see the organic blobby things smoothly scale in the arcade version as you shoot them and they gradually shrink. In the PC Engine, they just used a few manually redrawn animation frames to shrink them. This level sees the absolute worst slowdown and flicker in the entire game. It's too bad they didn't slightly redesign the level to prevent this. Personally, I'd rather have seen it cut down a bit. Maybe put shorter arms on the blobs and have fewer bullets so that they could maintain the speed and frame rate while avoiding the flicker. Stage 6 is pretty close between the two games, and well done on the PC Engine. The biggest difference here is really just the color of different parts of the background. Here comes the boss! If you're not powered up, it's kinda tough. If you are powered up, well, you'll see. And here we are on the final level. As we enter the fortress, we can see a pretty different color choice between the arcade and PC Engine versions of the game. As far as the content of the level, it's actually very close. There are fewer enemy bullets and they're a bit slower, but other than that, this level is about spot on. I prefer the sort of gradient-style look in the PC Engine version's background, but the foreground colors on the pipes and walls are better in the arcade version. At least I think so. Prepare to witness one of the most difficult final boss fights in history. The arcade ending is super elaborate. Did I say elaborate? I meant short. Yeah, the enemy base scales in and explodes. That's it. No credits, no ending music or anything like that. Game just starts over. PC Engine ending features the base staying small, but your ship kind of flies out of it in faux scaling, and then we see the base explode, and then we get credits and an ending song. When all is said and done, they did a pretty good job on the PC Engine version of Gradius. Yeah, it could have been better, and you know what? Konami figured that out as well, because when they ported Gradius 2 to the PC Engine CD, well, it was extremely close to arcade perfect. But that's a story for another time, right? Alright, thanks for sticking around to the end here. What else is there to say about Gradius? I don't know, you've pretty much seen it all.
I've seen everything. Yeah, I've seen it all.
We've got a very competent port of Gradius despite having some flaws like the slowdown and the scrolling and all the slowdown. That's worth mentioning twice there. So how about this? How about a fun little NES Gradius port factoid? Did you know that in the manual for the original Gradius, they don't refer to your ship as the Vic Viper? Oh no, they gave it its own exclusive name for the US version. Are you ready for it? You pilot the Warp Rattler! But Konami would never make the same mistake of renaming the ship for the US version of a Gradius game, until Gradius 3 came out for the Super Nintendo a few years later. What did they name the Vic Viper in that one? M-A-X. Periods and all. And that'll do it for this video, my retro gaming friends. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. If you haven't already, please subscribe. If you want to leave a comment and share your opinions on Gradius, please do that, and also share the channel with your friends. Or enemies, I don't care, whoever you want. With that, I'll say thanks for watching, and see me later.